Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, καλησπέρα. Καλώς ορίσατε στο φακό του Hellenic TV. Σήμερα έχουμε ένα πολύ ενδιαφέρον θέμα. Πρόκειται για μία εκδήλωση που θα γίνει στο Cyprus High Commission στις 23-25 Φεβρουαρίου και το θέμα είναι Negotiating a Frozen Conflict in Academia. Reflections on Youth, Peacemaking and the Cyprus Divide. Και φιλοξενούμε τον Ethan Chandler από το Πανεπιστήμιο Οξφόρδης, ο οποίος σπουδάζει Γεωγραφία, Melek Kaptanoglu από το Queen's University in Belfast, Anthropology, και τον Ανδρέα Παπαλλά, ο οποίος είναι επίσης στο University of Oxford και σπουδάζει Sustainable Urban Development. Welcome everyone. It's really nice meeting you, and thank you for being with us tonight to discuss this very interesting upcoming event. And as a start, I would like to ask, actually I'm quite curious, what inspired you to organize this event, and what do you hope attendees will take away from it? Any of you? Can we go with Ethna?
Yes, absolutely. So we are all studying Cyprus in our universities. Melek and Andreas are both Cypriot. I'm British, but I've been studying Cyprus as part of my research in my geography degree here at Oxford. So last summer, I conducted some research in Cyprus with young people focusing on everyday peacemaking. And whilst I was there, I met Melek, I met many other amazing young people, journalists, academics, etc. in Cyprus. So I was really inspired by the potential for future research in Cyprus and in the region. And I also really wanted to make sure that people had a better understanding of what was going on in Cyprus today. I mean, often in Britain, Cyprus is quite misunderstood, or it's only understood insofar as being a tourist destination with nice beaches, etc., which is true, of course, but there's more to Cyprus than just that. So together with Melek and Andreas, we have organized this event, and we will all be discussing our different experiences with research in Cyprus, and particularly in relation to the Cyprus problem and in relation to peacemaking. And I mean, Melek and Andreas, you can also say what you would like to get out of the event. But for me, I would really like it to be an event where people can discuss their experiences, where we can discuss how young people are interacting with the conflict. And also, it's really important to me to highlight that Cyprus is multi-ethnic, multilingual, lots of minority groups that are sometimes overlooked in these discussions. And I think it should just be a really good opportunity to discuss the conflict from all of our different perspectives, and also to build upon the shared experiences that we have.
Thank you, Ethna. And I have to say that I'm very impressed with your Greek. I didn't know that you can speak so well. Exactly. Next interview will be in Greek.
Okay, θα μιλήσουμε στα ελληνικά. Ναι.
Μπράβο, χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ. Χαιρόμαστε πραγματικά. Now, Melek, welcome. It's really nice to have you with us. And I'm very impressed that you are touching such a sensitive topic, you know. How do you know each other?
Well, actually, Ethan and I met through his research because I was part of a project called Winds of Change. It was a bicommunal sailing project. We became the first bicommunal sailing team, circumnavigated around the island. It was such a project, and Ethan and I met to talk about this and this education and related issues. So I was his interviewee, actually. And thanks to him, and during the preparations of the event, I met with Andreas. We didn't meet in person yet either. We will meet in the event. So yeah, this is how everything happened.
Excellent. Andrea, welcome. It's really nice to have you with us. How do you feel about this topic? What
Thank
do
you,
you...
Vasula, for having us to begin with, and thank you, Ethan, for organizing. He's the glue that brought us together. We share a supervisor, and had no idea that there was a person studying geography that looked into the Cyprus conflict in such depth and clarity that I think was very refreshing for me to read some of Ethan's work. For me, it's a very interesting topic. I have been looking at the Cyprus conflict from, let's say, a spatial perspective, coming from architecture and urban design background. From the time I was doing my master's, which was back in 2000 and when was this? 2014. So at that time, it was a time where everything was very hopeful for the negotiations, for the Cyprus peace process. There was a lot of youth initiatives that were emerging, and I know we don't talk about politics, but they were supported by the political, let's say, atmosphere, and everything was going quite well. So at that time, I was doing research about opportunities that two communities can come together, and I was looking at various such opportunities in Nicosia. And then, let's say, my passion has diminished because the hopeful negotiations were also diminishing. And it took a while until I became again interested in diversity and multicultural face of Nicosia, at this time also considering the other minorities that Ethan talked about, because we look at the conflict very frequently as a dipole between Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities, but there are so many other communities that make Nicosia a very rich city and Cyprus a very rich cultural and social environment. So I think it's very refreshing to discuss with people that are coming in this with a fresh eye and a fresh mindset. And Melek, who is coming at it from, let's say, the Turkish Cypriot perspective, and Ethan, who is coming from an outsider perspective, even though if you read his work, it reads very much like an insider's view. So I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion. I hope it will be a very interesting discussion about the past, but also about the future and what we look forward to in imagining a life together.
To achieve, yes, for the future.
Yeah.
Now, Ethna, can you share any insights from your research on how geography can be used as a tool for peace building rather than division?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I don't want to share too much. You'll have to come to the event to hear more. But geography certainly is really, really important to the Cyprus problem. In many ways, geography is the division, it represents the spatial division, the buffer zone, the checkpoints. And I think in the past, the geographical separation of the communities in Cyprus meant that people were also socially separated, and that reinforced some of that mistrust between the communities. But actually, today, geography is being used in a much more positive way, I think, and I hope. So, for instance, the Home for Cooperation is a space in the buffer zone. It's located in this area that is very reflective of war and conflict. And yet people go there to engage in peacemaking, to talk to people with different perspectives. So I think geography can kind of be flipped on its head, if you like, and used in a much more inclusive way. And I'll also say that I was inspired a lot by Nick McGoran. He's a geographer at Newcastle University.
Okay.
And students from Newcastle actually go to Cyprus every year on a field trip. And he came up with this term, Irenic geopolitics, from the Greek word irini, which is a very peaceful form of geography. So a geography that looks at peace and peacemaking and actually looks at what people are experiencing on the ground on a daily basis rather than just the politicians and the negotiations. And this was really important to me, to look at how Cypriots on a daily basis were engaging and enacting their own versions of peace. So I think geography in many ways represents the division of Cyprus. Of course it does, but also it can hopefully be used as a tool for peace and reconciliation as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Edna. Now, from an anthropological perspective, how do Cypriots on both sides of the divide perceive and engage with the idea of a reconciliation, Melek?
Well, first of all, I shall say there is not much or enough social anthropological research in Cyprus. When you look at the literature, you see just a few research. First of all, those things need to increase, I believe, because it's all about the living culture, what people are actually doing today. For example, past and the future was already mentioned, but what's happening actually today in the field when you go. So in this sense, it's important. My research is about peace activism and peace building at the grassroots level, which we are taking for granted because it's in daily life, but it's shaping, actually. We are shaping it right now on the streets in the daily life. So when we look at the places already mentioned, at Home for Cooperation, AHDR, the Letra Palace Buffer Zone, all of these places, in these places, reconciliation is ongoing at the grassroots level with this bicommunal and multicommunal activities. So in this sense, social anthropology gives different perspectives for people to look for it, to understand it, gains different perspectives for people because, like Andreas mentioned, I grew up in the Turkish Cypriot community and familiar with that perspective, but I am learning and looking for the other perspectives. Social anthropology also gives these ideas, what the other people thinking, and the other in quotation mark, but at the same time, when you are doing the research, you need to listen and try to understand perspectives. So it gives us this insight, and it is very important to understand the culture, and at the same time, it is very conflict transformation and related issues.
Do you think there are any similarities in the culture between the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriot?
Definitely. We have a common culture. First of all, we are sharing, the same island. We have the Cypriot culture. It's our common ground at the beginning. So definitely, we have this unique common culture in Cyprus. Of course, we are sharing, we are using Cypriot dialect in both languages. Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots both are speaking Cypriot dialect in their languages. So this is also another common issue. We have a lot of shared words. We have common shared food and music and dance, many things. And this is alive, this is lively. When you go to a bicommunal event, you can easily see people enjoying same food, same music, same expressions. Even when they are saying bad words, they are using same bad words.
And I think the hospitality also. There is, because I think both sides are, I'm not talking when there is conflict, but let's say if you meet someone here who is Turkish Cypriot, they will invite you and, asking you to stay for dinner and this, and the same with the Greek Cypriots. I will say, from what I learned and while I grew up. Now, Andreas, how can sustainable urban development contribute to the creation of shared spaces that promote reconciliation in Cyprus? This is very difficult for you to answer, and I wonder how you are going to answer this question.
That is the question. That is the one of the most difficult questions that you can ask.
Yes.
But I think Melek has touched upon this a little bit when she spoke about, anthropology looks at the human layer and how people interact. And I'm very interested in the places where this interaction happens and why it happens and how does this interaction can help facilitate rapprochement or the change of prejudices between the two communities. So the role of space, and speaking about space, we look at space within the buffer zone, like the Home for Cooperation Ethan mentioned, is a very interesting case study. There's other spaces on both sides on top of my mind, from the pedestrianization project of Lidra Street to the Lokmaji checkpoint or the Faneromeni Square are all urban projects that were developed. Again, we talk a lot about grassroots, but always things happen vertically as much as horizontally. So these are urban planning projects that involve indeed political decisions and politicians and budgets and people that also design them. And another very interesting project is, of course, the Nicosia Master Plan, which is the bi-communal team of planners that has been doing for so many years projects on both sides. Again, if you come to our event, you will also hear some more critical opinions of these projects and maybe what positives have been brought out, but also what have we learned from all of these projects and what can we improve and how can we look at spaces differently in order to help reconciliation. One common criticism, for example, is that these spaces that have this bi-communal, let's say, headline attract people that already are eager to meet the other, are happy to have these conversations and be in these multicultural or bi-communal environments. But people who are more resistant to change or to looking at the multicultural realities of Cyprus will not attend such events or will not go to such places. So this creates a good question of what can you do. And then in my research, I looked at cases like the Cyprus Rally, for instance, when it went through the buffer zone. It went 2 years and then it stopped. Which was a very interesting event that brought people that wouldn't normally go to these areas. And they wouldn't discuss with each other. And of course, they don't discuss about peace, they discuss about cars and drivers and stuff like that. But again, this helps a lot in bringing the communities together. So it's a combination of geography, anthropology, politics.
It's a
There is
lot
a
to
phrase
consider.
that
Yes.
you serve a lot of masters, but you are master of none. So architects are usually in this area where they try to understand how different things come together in space without becoming experts in any of these domains. And I think this is what makes it interesting for me.
Thank you. Now, I'll have one more question before I come to you, Ethna. Sorry about this, but I will let you speak, I promise. Melek, do you think there is enough space for young Cypriots to participate in decision-making processes regarding the future of Cyprus?
I'm afraid not. No, there is not enough space for us, for young people, to be part of the process. And there are various reasons for that. There can be prejudices and people's fears at the same time. But do we really creating this space for people, enough space for people? I don't think so. I mean, if we look for the peace negotiations in terms of the political level, it is still very much top-down, seen as top-down process. It's on the power of politicians, and young people's voices are not heard there very much. Also at the grassroots level, I don't think young people have enough space to be part of these activities enough. And the education system of ours, it is also very problematic across the divide. It is also creating many prejudices against the other communities. So it is also creating problems. So simply, no, I don't believe there are enough space or things.
I feel that it's different when you are in Cyprus and the people in UK, let's say, when they meet with each other, I think the attitude is different or the psychology is different. But the Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, if they meet in Cyprus, it's a different thing. I don't know why, but that's what I feel.
I definitely agree. I've heard many stories, like my very first friend from the other community, I met them when I was studying in the UK. I've heard this many times. So I don't know why either. Maybe
Yes.
people feel more comfortable, maybe more safe, maybe it's more neutral space, or maybe the idea of being a student makes people feel more, closer to each other because it is something beyond being Turkish Cypriot,
Yes.
but just a student.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Sometimes when you are in another country, you feel, okay, he's one of my, of us. Let's say if you happen to be in Germany or any other part of the world apart from Cyprus, you feel that, you are one. Now, I'm going to go to Ethna. Have you noticed, Ethan, any geographical patterns in how young people engage with activists and peacemaking efforts?
It's a very interesting question. Just before I answer that, Vasula, I wanted to say, in relation to what Melek and you were just talking about, in November, I went to the screening of a film, The Divided Island, in North London. And it's an amazing, amazing film. And it was directed by one Turkish Cypriot, one Greek Cypriot from North London. And in this movie theatre were Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, Cypriots from all different communities. And they were all sat together in this cinema in London. And I thought that was an incredible thing to see, that, as you said, the differences almost kind of dissolve in a different context, which is really interesting. So to come to your question, there were some really interesting geographical patterns. So when I was in Cyprus, I spent most of my time researching in Nicosia, but I also went to cities in the south and in the north. And it was very interesting to see that in Nicosia, there was very much a bubble of activists, committed peace activists who went to all of these intercommunal events. They were always at the Home for Cooperation, and it was very inspiring to see. However, one theme that came through in my interviews with participants was that for Cypriots who aren't in Nicosia or who aren't near to any crossing points, it's much more difficult for them to get involved in peacemaking. And actually, I had one participant who grew up in Nicosia, was involved in peace activism, but then moved to Limassol. And he lost touch with his friends from the other community. He lost touch with his peace activism just because he wasn't close to the crossing points. It wasn't a visible feature of his life when he was down on the south coast in Limassol. So that was really interesting to look at, that geographical pattern of people who felt that they could participate in peace activism.
Right, and because we only have 6 minutes, I'm just going to remind quickly the date of the event, which is going to be Tuesday, 25th February at Cyprus High Commission. I think, is it 7 o'clock? If I'm not
6:30, I think.
6:30. And there is Eventbrite where people can book their place. It's free. So now I'm going to give you, as I said, 2 minutes each to tell me, how do you see the future of Cyprus evolving in terms of, sorry, this is for you, I change it. Given your research and experiences, what practical steps do you think could be taken to encourage a more constructive conversation about the Cyprus divide?
And this was for me.
Yes, I give you 2 minutes each.
This is a very, very difficult question to answer in 2 minutes. Something that people haven't been able to do in 50 years.
You can just tell us one thing.
Well, I would say the main thing, and something that I was very inspired by, was emphasizing those commonalities between all Cypriots, the Cypriot dialects, learning each other's languages. And there were lots of people who volunteered as language teachers, teaching Turkish or Greek. I think that could be one very straightforward and yet really powerful step for all communities to come together.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Edna. Melek.
Well, I have a lot too, but I'll keep it summary, and I strongly encourage the audience to join our event, so maybe we can share more ideas.
Yes, we can.
But what I can say is, please try to look for the other side of the medallion, because most of us are taught to, taught only by one side of the medallion. We just know some part of the story. Look for the other parts of the story. Try to complete the puzzle. And I am sure we all have things to share with us, because we have this common thing as Cypriots. It's not that far. It's not that different. It's not that weird. It's not that much scary. So try to take a step forward out of the comfort zones and look for the other side of the medallion. And as a very practical suggestion, if you don't know where to start with, just go to Home for Cooperation. Just go to Metropolis Buffer Zone and have a coffee. You will find your way.
Yes, a nice cup of coffee always helps, you know. Andrea.
From my perspective, I think the first step will be looking at opportunities to create shared spaces and shared experiences and promote interaction. And this could be at the grassroots level, and there's a lot and great examples of that. But also, it needs to be a priority from the policymakers and from those that, take key decisions that affect the daily lives. Because, as Ethan said, is a common observation that if people move away geographically from these hotspots, they also lose out on opportunities for interaction and for socialization and for journeys of learning and sharing. And I think the way to prioritize that comes from always, from bottom up, from top down, horizontally, and it needs to become a priority to increase interaction between the communities and offer opportunities across the board.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So, as Edna said at the beginning, it wasn't a good idea to say too much, but I'm sure the viewers would like to hear more about it. So they will have an opportunity on Tuesday, 25th of February at the Cyprus High Commission in London. Thank you so much, and we are looking forward to the event.
Thank you very much, Fasula. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, εμείς θα τα πούμε και πάλι πολύ σύντομα με ένα καινούριο θέμα και καινούριους φιλοξενούμενους. Καλό σας βράδυ.